Well, Caroline, I have a simple proposition like you about all of this. I think Australia has to have a basket of energy responses. And right now, about 70-something% is either coal or gas that is actually creating the electricity that we're seeing. There's probably about 10% doing wind turbine and about nothing from the solar panels because it's dark all around the country. But you know that we've got to have a variety of things. Some countries have nuclear. Some countries use geothermal, the heat of the ground, to drive the turbine. Some burn garbage inside metropolitan areas. In plenty of places in Europe, they do all of that as well. Australia is promising to be a world energy superpower when it comes to renewables. We can't even power our own country. How the hell do we actually believe that we can deliver on the promise the Prime Minister's been making over the last couple of weeks?
And that's a really good point. Look, I've always been energy agnostic. I'm not particularly fussed which sorts of energy we have, but I think that, like you're right, we should have a variety of them. Some are dispatchable, some are not dispatchable, and we have seen over the course of particularly the last few weeks, or particularly since the war in Ukraine started, things have gotten pretty spicy in Germany because they've closed down a lot of their coal power plants, they've closed down a lot of their nuclear power plants, and they were relying on Russian gas, which is dispatchable, and renewables. Well, now that the Russian gas is dwindling, they've been having blackouts, and there is real concern going into winter about the ability to run their manufacturing and obviously, you know, to keep Germans out of the cold, quite literally out of the cold. And including the German Greens, they have now voted to unmothball, decommission coal power plants instead of nuclear power plants, which I don't really quite understand the logic there and why the Greens would prefer coal instead of nuclear. But look, let's just park that to one side. But they're actually having to do this because they do need the dispatchable power. The current storage methods are not sufficient for renewables to be dispatchable, so we do need to have other baseload power. I mean, that should not be a controversial thing to say. We're just saying the technology isn't there yet. So can we just take this one step at a time so we don't have rolling brownouts and rolling blackouts? And it's all wonderful for people to buy electric cars. But look, if you can't turn on the lights, mate, you can't charge your car. So I'm not really sure why we are putting extra pressure onto our electricity grid when we're not really sure if we're going to be able to have the power to drive it in the first place.
And Caleb, I've told this story before, but the story is the same in countries like ours all around the world. A bloke out of the UK came to Sydney back in February, spoke at an infrastructure conference I was at, and he said they're going to need to rewire the British power grid, a copper cable 1 inch thick, 1 inch round, and which would stretch from Perth, Scotland to Perth, WA, OK? So a very long piece of copper cable. He told the British government everyone wants copper cable to rewire their grid because they all want to put wind farms up, right? To look good, to keep everyone happy. He said, go and buy a copper mine, go and buy a copper cable making company because otherwise you're not going to get the supply of this. I mean,